So welcome to the porch, Raméz.
Thank you for having me. It's my first podcast as well, so I'm quite excited and hopefully it'll go smoothly.
Let me start with some numbers that caught my attention lately. And I thought I'll start with numbers because you're a businessman with a background in finance and economics. So this is some numbers that Accenture Consulting published a while ago. And it's all to do with the Global Disruption Index that they have created to measure disruptions across multi-dimensions, economic, social, technology, political, and all that. So the really interesting numbers, look what they say. Between 2017 and 2022, the disruption index was 200% higher than what happened between 2011 and 2016. It was just 4%.
Wow.
Imagine.
Wow.
When I saw these numbers, it just, I don't know, it was like a bang. I mean, we're all feeling it, but when you see it measured in this way, it's a wake-up call somehow. But just brings me to your book, Interrupted Entrepreneurship, which was published 2018, was really focused on embracing change that I found was more internal change that happened personally to you within the family business, the intergenerational family business that you have. First, tell us a little bit about this family business.
The family, I'm fourth generation family business. I was unaware of the challenges of a family business and the statistics that are stacked against a fourth generation family business. So the first statistic I found to tie in with what you said about the index was that we had a 2% chance of surviving. So in a way, I felt kind of relieved because I felt like it was already stacked against me for the family members to succeed in what we're doing. And at the same time, I felt like relieved to also look at, well, I could do something else. I could look at something else. So we know it says interrupted entrepreneurship. And a friend of mine said, what's family business got to do with entrepreneurship? And I said, well, the first seed for any family business is entrepreneurship. And then the entrepreneurship seed grows into generations. Some are capable and some are not. So I thought, am I the capable one in my fourth generation or not? As far as our business, it's not the typical, but then as I started to do the research, I found out it's actually typical because every generation of ours actually did something different than the other. So agriculture, then there was real estate and exchange banking and cinemas, and then into trucks and tires, into construction. And, and I was like, I thought that was unique to us. But I found out that basically it's either the business separates from the family members or the business doesn't carry on. Very rarely do you find the same business succeeding in the same industry it's in going forward because of the fact that things evolve, and you talked about the disruption that has happened since 2017, since the book was actually written.
Exactly.
So how much has come about from this? So I kind of took the statistics and I'm going to take it to heart the same way as I took the 2% chance of surviving and say, well, that explains why I feel the constant bombardment and waking up in the morning, trying to be, and then do the next best thing. What is the right thing to do? What tools do I need to bring to the organization? So that was sort of like the reasoning behind writing the book, is to seek knowledge from others, especially that my dad had passed away 10 years ago. And I kind of felt like I lost a brain drain in the organization. I said, well, okay, how do I find that? And the journey led me into, I wasn't really planning to write a book. I was just trying to collect information. Somehow I end up publishing the book. I even wanted to do it under somebody else's name in fear that it would not be a good publication. But lucky enough, it went well. And, it's a reference point. It's actually like my business card. When I have somebody come over to my office, I just pass it on.
Yeah. But let's zoom in a little bit on the change part, the disruption.
Yeah.
I know you called it here interruption. And maybe in the way I see it is more disruption, because we are talking here about unconventional times. Why unconventional? Because the external disruptions are huge and fast-paced. The change is enormous, and it's more often, and the effect is global. And that's where I think knowledge mindfulness came into the picture. Sensing that unconventional times that we're living in, it just brought in that feeling, how do we embrace change in such a world where we can't make sense of so many things anymore? It's so complex and unpredictable that we don't know what's coming. There's no blueprint to tell us what's our next step.
True.
And this is where I think my question or my curiosity starts, is if you're to write a second edition of this book right now, with a 200% increase in disruption, which point or chapter would you rewrite in a major way?
I think the section about adaptability. I think that I found that when I worked on it, I thought, I'm quite adaptable to the changes that are going into my organization. But as you mentioned, the external factors that are coming in are coming at such fast pace. How do you keep that in motion? I would probably link it up also with the human resource, which is the biggest element that I feel makes our organization the strongest, which is the people, and how we can be able to sort of get them to be more adaptable by creating an environment that is, how best to say it, more intuitive in its sharing of information, and trying to use that intuitive information to collectively improve the organization. Now, sometimes you have to weed these lessons and these sharings so that you can pick the best one. And then the ones that are not relevant now, if you're lucky enough, you can make a parking lot and say, hey, I can come back to it and see if I can bring it into my structure. So I'm quite optimistic. At the same time, I used to be the young guy in the room, and now I'm the not so young guy in the room. And I feel bringing in the people with younger blood can make the adaptability even better, especially with all these tools that are flying our way with AI. I feel I'm a little bit out of touch, and I'm trying to catch up.
A first thought is human resources has always been a word that is so much focused on the functionality. Like people are like machines, we have to manage, we have to control so much, that kind of bureaucracy that I have so much a feeling of when you say human resource. I don't know if I'm just throwing this thought, but if we really thought of human resource as human relationship building, more or less, because as you said, refocusing on the people in a genuine way, because we hear a lot of that jargon of, people, but at the end, it's the same old, with just, a bit of repackaging. But if we really want fundamental changes in organizations, what about focusing on the relationship between your people, your employees, your leaders, your senior managers, and the organization? And how do you connect the two in ways where they feel they're in this together?
I love that.
So I don't know, but I feel you have written so much in this book about relationships. You talked now about your father and about the story of chain migration and how the bonding and that so much that feeling that of community that they were so eager to build. So do you think this is happening in today's organizations?
I think the AI element that we talk about here impacts this, because I feel like, sometimes I hear people saying, I'm going to shut down my service department, I'm going to replace it with AI. Where is the human relationship there? Where is the fundamental building of that relationship? So I feel like the model of business is to make money, and using the tools sometimes replaces the humans that are in the equation. And you have to be very weary about that, because at the end of the day, humans and AI they complement each other. The AI is a tool and not a replacement of the human element in the organization. So I think that we're still in the gray area of people trying to build that, but I subscribe to this. I fully subscribe for the fact that relationships are very important. I have a PA with me who's been for 30 years. He wants to retire next year, and I'm finding it very difficult to sort of let go of that relationship that we have. It's much more than just what he's done for me or what I've done for him, and that transcends throughout the organization. One of the things we have in our company is continuous improvement. And in the reading your book, I saw that theme sort of come across when you talk about, adaptability, conscious mindfulness, intentionality, and trying to be mindful of the relationships that you have in the company or around people. It doesn't have to be also in your company, but within the people that are with you in the organization. And to your point, you were saying about human resources as what I referred to. And frankly, I don't even call the people I work with anything but, instead of like some people say staff, I say, team members. I don't refer to them anything but that, because it's a team and then we're all equal in one way or the other. And if you live by that, and if you remember those sort of terminologies, because they make a huge difference in the psyche of the people around you, you think, he's on top of the organization. That means he can fix it all, he knows it all, and we go back to him. Instead, it should be more like a linear structure and trying to be able to get that information flowing across. That's where the relationship matters a lot.
Definitely. There's this argument when this augmented knowledge is so available everywhere for everyone, then what is our competitive edge as human beings? And that brings us to wisdom, good judgment, the ability to discern, between, like you said, it's not all black and white, because life is colors. It's all this multi-dimensions of colors. And I don't know to the best of my knowledge right now, we only have the black and white coming from robots and algorithms.
True.
And I think this is where the human being will be, put into the equation in an anchored way more than ever. But that brings me again to something you mentioned in your book about your father. His last advice that he gave you was interesting because he combines what we just said, in a very amazing way. He told you, hold things in the middle. On one hand, be passionate and compassionate. On the other hand, be smart and wise. For me, when I read this, it was like, oh my God, I just brought goosebumps, because what he's saying is what you need as a human being in today's world, and this is kind of timeless, it seems, is what? Your intelligence and wisdom, good judgment in using that intelligence, but also you need that human side of you, your passion and compassion. And I felt that's so powerful because it just touches so much on this holistic approach to intelligence or human intelligence. Because for me, AI is the intelligence, IQ, logic, facts, augmented knowledge that can be extracted. But where's the other side of the equation? That compassion that we're talking about, that's the kind of energy that we feel. It's like you have a plastic flower and you have a really natural flower that you can smell it, you can enjoy it in so many ways different. So tell me more about your father's wisdom in that matter.
When I first joined the family business, and I'd worked for a few years outside, and my dad had pitched to me the idea of come and work for us. I arrived on the first day to the job. I was dressed up as if I was going to some GQ magazine show, dressed up with cufflinks and ties and all kinds of stuff. And I walked in and I said, "Oh, where's my desk?" And the HR person said, there's no instruction for you to get a desk. And I went in and to my dad's office and I said, Dad, where am I going to sit? And he said, you're going to walk around and wherever you find a department that you're comfortable with, if that's going to be in logistics or that's going to be in the cleaning department, it's going to be in the service, it's going to be in the sales, whatever you want. You want to hide somewhere, you want to go hide. And they will teach you everything that they do. And I was like, kind of like baffled. I mean, he asked me to join the business and I couldn't see where's the wisdom. I felt like I was forced onto him. And I went back and I spoke to my mom and I said, what's going on? I mean, and she goes, you'll understand in time. 9 months in, day out, I would go to the office. By then, of course, my dress wear had changed into more casual, more into wearing the overalls, more figuring out what I have to adapt to the department that I'm in. And 9 months to the day, as if you had a baby, he came and gave me a corner desk that was really not the best location, had no window, had no view, had nothing. And I was so elated by the fact that he gave me that desk. And that short period of time got me from, well, it's not about a degree in desks or in location, but it's about how you're going to be able to engage in the organization and be a contributing part of it in the relationships that you build. And it was a great way because everybody in the organization started to see, instead of, oh, Mr. So-and-so has come to the organization because he is, related by genetic disposition to this post. No, he went through all of these things. And it was a long time coming before I was able to take one position versus the other. So that's sort of an example of wisdom that I couldn't really understand when he did it. It took me many years to understand that. And he said many things while I was working with him for the 25 plus years that I was with him. But I learned to understand and appreciate them as I get older. Like they say, when you have a child, you understand what your parents have gone through. Well, when I'm left alone and he's not there and his advice is not there, and I'm like, oh, I can see the challenges, I can see the things he's going with. So, and many, like slew of wisdom that he's come and given me while I was with him, and even past that, when I go look back, when we spoke before to prepare for this, I opened the book for a while, I haven't opened it, and I was reading through it, and I was like, wow, I have some things to refresh myself, and it'll help me somehow.
That's definitely the case. I see that we can take some timeless principles from the past, from our learnings, from our parents, from history.
Yeah.
But these can be, you have the freedom and choice to tweak them, to live them in different ways and different practices that are more suited to today's world.
I like what you say.
So
it's very nicely put.
If you can build on that in your learning now, tell us, how do you really do that? How do you connect those principles that you took from your father, from the stories, from the past? Of course, the ones, like you said, that work still.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. You picked up on that one.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah.
So how do you do that?
We were talking earlier about the fact that, in my journey of learning, it was an internal process within the organization, but also an external process by going and engaging with, organizations or executive programs, or learning about things that are of interest of mine, or even the evolution of the industries that we're in. Some industries that we're not in. Over the last 15 years, we created a single family office, which had the purpose of it is to invest in things that we've never done before. So that forces your hand to go and try to learn. So by going and seeking those institutions that can be able to teach you and bring back also that knowledge into the organization, plus mixing up and adding new blood. I found that, people who've been with you for about 10 to 15 years, if you don't invest the time to be able to give them more skills and bring up a little bit more of training, if we can create a framework, which is the explicit that you speak about in your book, and then talk about the tactile or tacit rules of intuition, of knowledge sharing, and then be able to put it there and then be able to revisit it. It's maybe a quarterly thing. It's not a daily thing that you do, and then see how it progresses to see that everything else is moving forward in that regard. But if you have younger people, they're going to bring you younger ideas. If you have, and that freshens up the older generation of my generation and then gets the younger people to feel engaged in one way.
You were talking now about, employees leaving and how you don't only feel you lose their knowledge, you lose their being, you lose a lot more than just a knowledge or capabilities that they were doing. Yeah. So how do you think going forward life would be with this tsunami of changes that's going around us? How is it going to be, or what are the practices that we're going to have to think about consciously to make this happen, to bond, to become together as human beings, because again, it's like we humans partnering with we robots. Yeah. So how do you see that?
Yeah, I think adaptability with filtration, if that comes across as the right thing, which is I will adapt to integrate what is required, but I will control the flow of it into my process as much as I can so that I don't create a disturbance. Because as I mentioned, the PA who's going to retire, he will be completely out of the cycle of AI because all through the career of this person, the AI was not part of this plan that they were doing. So I have to integrate. How can I talk about, I subscribe to relationships in the organization and talk about training people, but not also keep in mind that there are people at the end of their career and they need to be also be given a chance to be able to continue on in one way or the other. So yes, you have to bring it in, but how much are the people willing to? And that's why I feel like people in my organization, and even at the board level, we have an age gap. And myself and my brother, and we have other family members who are much younger. I feel their integration in the organization, listening to their voices, where they'll be able to bring the new things together. And we felt this in our single family office fund, because when it was presented, and I'll just go off for a second, my father and my mother said, okay, here's a bunch of money, a small amount, we're going to put it aside, and you are going to make a decision collectively, all of you, and you can make an investment if all of you agree to it. A year and a half, 2 years go by, we didn't agree. No investments were made. The money was sitting there. Nobody was benefiting from it. And when I looked at my prejudice or my preconceived ideas, but this is a young person, what would they know? And they looked at, I'm an old guy from, another century, So it took a while to bridge those views. And when we did that, new ideas, new investments in technology, even though now the market is hit a little bit with the technology bit, with DeepSeek and stuff. But, I was like, I can see the added value. But then we have these preconceptions. Even when I read in your book, we have thoughts in our minds that block us, or we don't understand or realize that are blocking us from being open in that regard. And sometimes somebody has to kind of wake you up. Yeah. And that's where the surprise is you think you are where you are, and you think you're advanced, and you're open-minded, and you're ready, and you're, as you said, these are jargon words. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but are you really implementing it? Are you taking it to the next level? And I go back to the statement I said earlier, which is a parking lot. If you're lucky enough to be organized, to put the parking lot of these ideas that you don't understand conceptually, like the wisdom and my advice on my father that I didn't understand fully until after he was gone. And I go back to that list and be able to do it will be great. Do we always do that? No, but we if we're able to, then that knowledge will always be, there's a feed in and there's a cycle that can break it and break the monotony in the organization.
I think you really said it well about the flow of knowledge in your organization with the multi-generations coming together, closing the gap between the younger and the older. I think this is the most important competency you can realize by valuing the age differences, because the youth bring the energy, they bring the courage, to implement new ideas, and they're aware of what's going on around more than the older. And I don't like to call them older. I like to call them too young to retire. That's a terminology I found to be, not to label.
I like that.
We tend to label.
I will use that if you don't mind.
Too young to retire. So if we really bring the wisdom Because again, we come to that word wisdom, which is a mix of the experiences and the good judgment. That mix, I think, in today's fast-moving world and unpredictable world, we need it more than ever, that kind of mix.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like knowledge infused with wisdom to bring out that unity we need. And that unity in organizations nowadays, because of the exponential advances in health technologies, have brought longevity into the equation. So people are living longer. Organizations are seeing 4 or 5 maybe generations working together, imagine. So how are you going to speak the same language? How are you going to make the best out of that energy and courage of the young and the wisdom and the experience of the too young to retire, to not park even? You said something about parking lot and putting those ideas. In an unconventional times, I think the shelf age of any knowledge or idea is shorter than ever. So even to put it in a parking lot, it's going to be useless. It's going to be useless. So maybe filtering those ideas, coming together to brainstorm what works, what doesn't, would be a much greater value. You talked about unlearning and taking that out and being open to unlearning as much as you're open to learning is also a great, great competency in unconventional times, because we don't pay attention to that part. But putting the two together, it brings me to the analogy of garden that you have used in the book. Tell us a little bit about that.
I don't have a green hand. So I use that gardening example. And many people around me just wonder, like, why did he use that analogy? And the idea was that I always felt that, if you ever think of your business as your life, the environment that you're around as a plot of land. And maybe this is stemming from the fact that we started in agriculture as well. So this kind of like lingo kind of carries on in the conversation at home. And you plant, but if you're into the gardening, you realize that certain plants require, certain environments. So you can be able to nourish a certain part of a fruit or a plantation in the same way across the board to everything. And it's the same thing as with any business idea or any team members in your organization or in any location that you're located at as your business, because you might be in multiple locations in that regard. By being open to the idea that, okay, I'm going to plan this because this is going to be a long-term investment. And this is going to be a short-term investment. And this is going to be a place where I'm going to have to re-soil again and create something else in this regard. What happens is it keeps you focused on what you have rather than on what you don't have. And then you learn the skills because, again, if you use it from an agricultural point of view, there are ways to improve and make the soil better, or to be able to, choose the right thing for the right time when you're doing wine. And then after a while, the wine soil is gone, then you have to plant something else to be able to grow something from it.
What caught my attention in what you're saying is how certain plants only grow well in certain soils, certain temperatures. But that brings me to the organizational settings. We usually, when you talk about learning and going and traveling and bringing some frameworks and ideas from here and there, and you think it can work in your context. And that's the sad part, because we never think that this is not the way to learn and this is not the way to apply what we learned. Why? Because we have a different context, a different soil, different people, different culture, different values. So how do you bring what you have learned and try to tailor it and blend it in a way that suits your environment to bring out that fruit that really kind of flourishes in its own soil?
Humbly, I would think that one has to be able to understand the environment that he's in or she's in. So if I don't understand my environment or my business or my culture, then yes, I will be just bringing ideas for the sake of bringing ideas. But if I build on the two models that you talked about, if we're sitting down, we have a structure where we're gathering information and we're seeing that this information leads us to 1, 2, 3 items, put aside the parking lot, but these items that we're going to apply. And we take these items and say, now we want to seek the knowledge and how we're going to bring it to our plot of land and nurture it. Now we have more than one party looking for it, more than one source of information, and then you come and bring in the best that you feel will have buy-in from the organization and fits with your organization and the soil that you have.
I think, you mentioned something about now your daughters asking you about women. And the role of women. Now
you
were
talking
about the culture, and I know you have this hobby of the historical documents that you kind of look for. So tell us about women in your organization. Are you consciously aware that women can play a different part or can add so much different flavor, let's say, to the organizational culture?
Absolutely. I happen to work in a family business where, besides myself and my brother, the rest of the family members are females and they're shareholders. So there is an understanding that you have to respect the other shareholders and their insight. I did share the example of, I looked at the younger generation. Well, they were the other gender as well, unintentionally, but they were the younger gender. So I wasn't listening as well as I should. But I thought I was a very pragmatic, open-minded person, because even my right-hand person in the organization, who's been now working with me for 24 years, is a lovely lady, very capable lady that I depend on. And I thought, progressively, this means that, this transcends into the other part of the organization. And because of the nature of our business in construction, you don't find a lot of females in that field as often as you would find in other fields. The big lesson I woke up to one day was, we were talking about learning from the past and history. I love to collect historic documents to learn from them. I mean, when you look at the wall I have in my office of all these historic documents, none of these people on the wall are perfect people, but they have made and achieved something in their field. I was very excited. It was about 10 years ago. I called my 3 daughters, and they were 8, 10, 12, something like that, the age. And I walked and I said, look at my wall. And here's, Martin Luther King, and here's Gandhi, and here's Einstein, and here's so on and so forth. And I was excited about it. And my 3 daughters looked at each other and looked at me and said, Dad, there are no famous women. And that jolted me to the core. With the background I just told you, all the family members mostly are females. My right-hand person is a female. I think of myself as a progressive guy. I have 3 daughters. My brother has 2 daughters. So, I mean, my idea is that, oh my God, I'm the modernist man that you can think of in this part of the world. And I looked at the wall and I was stunned. And I didn't know what to tell them. And I went looking, and I found, of course, it was easy to find many, 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 many famous females. The first astronaut female was, her name is Valentina, was a Russian. Madame Curie, Mother Teresa. There's plenty to can find. But it took a young child with clear, unfogged eyes, as you said, the fogging, and it just it's obvious to them, but was not obvious to me. And that's one of those things where then it's put me in the mindset all the time of, well, if I think I'm 100% sure about something, I take a pause. And I say, let me rethink about this again from another perspective, because am I hearing this right? What's helped me also being part of an organization where we have something called the forum, where we kind of come together and, we share business, family, personal sort of experiences in this regard. The forums I have the females on is the forum that I have a complete different perspective and diversity and views, and makes it much better as an experience. So that's where I feel like I have much to learn. But
I like that you take time to reflect, to rethink. that you really don't take things as they come. And I think that's a big part that we need to add in unconventional times, where we create consciously a mental space, physical space to reflect on what happened in our day. Why did I do this? Why did I do that? How did I react? Instead of pointing fingers, we can point finger at ourselves first. Why? Because again, it goes to the thing you just started with. For evolving world, for evolving markets, we need evolving people. We can't evolve if we don't sit with ourselves and reflect and rethink things, because that's the way, right?
I mean, I couldn't agree with you on this point 1,000%. If you don't sit down and take a pause with yourself every day and rethink about what you're doing, and even have a time to bounce it with somebody else, you're going to be in your own shell, and that will make you like blinders on your eyes. You can't really see what can be better and what can be worse where you're at that moment.
Right. And I think when you mentioned your forum, I think your forum brings in that different perspectives that kind of widens your view, widens your awareness in ways you can never, ever have with you reading even a book or, hearing a podcast alone. So, taking all that brings us to the eye on the future.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the past, we talked about learning from the present, the unconventional times, but also having an eye on the future. And I know we talked about unpredictability, uncertainty. It's so hard to have that foresight when everything is foggy and stormy around us. But how would you advise your 3 daughters about the future?
I would say that first we would to take it from the point where you said where we're at today. In my book, I repeatedly say, unfortunately, I was unable until recently to live the moment, to sit in the moment. It was always the past and looking at the future. And there's a story in the book I speak about a friend of mine who passed away, who had brain cancer, and his brother was the number 2 in the world to treat this, but he could not help his own brother. And when I told him about this book I was writing at the time, he said to me, the one thing that's missing in all your story is living the moment. And he said, if I could write, because of the motor impact it had on his writing and his reading and his hearing because of the brain disease he had, he said, I want to write something for my children, but I can't. And that's why in the end of my book, I kind of write a poem to my daughters, which I don't think they have read the book because they haven't commented yet about it, but I think they're still young.
Do you want to read that poem to them now?
Yes, I'd love to, yes.
Okay.
I haven't read this in a while. I hope that in hindsight, it's still relevant today as it was when I wrote it 8 years ago. Life is like a river. It runs fast and slow, wide and narrow. Meander down the river with your goals. Remember, goals will evolve. They are just part of the whole. Be flexible while you stand tall. Be willing to duck to weather the storm. Sometimes the wind doesn't even blow. You must get up and push forth to see what the future holds. Armor yourself when you open your arms to moments of happiness and others of grief. Cushion life's tidal waves by wearing your heart sometimes within your sleeves. Aim to improve, think big, and get in the driver's seat. To my daughters, Faye, Talia, and Lana, from your loving dad.
Wow. I really, really appreciate these words because they reflect so much of the concepts that knowledge mindfulness advocates, which is lead your way. You take charge and take agency of their life, and don't be led so much, especially these days when everything is presented for you so easily, and being patient and knowing when to let go. and when to really stand tall and, have that effort to be courageous, to act on your beliefs. So there's so much wisdom in these worlds. And I really thank you so much, Raméz, for sharing all that. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.